Good morning, everybody. It's Meredith from the Backyard Caring and the Guelph Tool Library. I'm in my garden this morning. Last night, on Wednesdays, I usually do a live stream. I streamed for about half an hour and I ended up losing the live stream when I went to post, so I thought I would just check in the morning and put a filler in place. Last night we made kale chips and some recycled gene planters, which were super cool, and I'm going to show you the results of that and maybe do a separate tutorial because it's super fun. Let's see, I've got some kale out here it was actually planted on a live stream last year in the fall, and I'm going to show you what it's up to now. We planted this guy as a little baby last fall, and now because it overwintered, it is now gone to seed. It's kind of funky shaped because it did fall over, so it's been kind of following the curve here. I'm actually excited about these blooms because I would like to gather a bit more seed from this variety. I'm not sure what it's actually being cross-pollinated with, but we're going to give it a try. I really like this type of kale variety for kale chips because the more kind of texture layer you have, the better it is for catching all those yummy additives that you want to put on. Like we used nutritional yeast, which is like a vegan cheese substitute. You can use real Parmesan, all sorts of spices and flavorings, popcorn seasoning, etc. Sea salt to flavor these up. Normally, I'm probably not going to pick any of these just because we have pretty hard water in Guelph, and you can actually see where some of that water has pooled in these leaves, and they don't look super great, but I like to harvest from the bottom. Let's go head over to my main patch of garden. I've got that's a banana plant. Everything's looking pretty happy right now. My exotic peppers are still quite small, but fun nonetheless. That is in fact a hot pepper. And there's a purple one right there. Okay, yeah, oh my goodness, there's some actual light. It's pretty cool. Which means the plants will be growing at a slower rate, but really nice for doing some hard work outside. At the front of my house, I have 2 raised beds, which I featured in these live streams many times. Let's flip around again. All right. So my raised beds, here's my kale patch. I did do quite a bit of picking last night, so I probably don't want to take too many, but I'll show you at the base of these plants that I usually like to pick the most outer leaves. This forces the plant to kind of grow up and focus on these new leaves on the plant, and also helps not to shade out my other plants here. For example, I have a micro tom tomato. Oh, the light is getting through and wrecking our video. These are like a super dwarf. Some of these actually have fruit. There's the fruit. They're just super tiny. If you have a very small garden, these are perfect because that's my hand and I have pretty small hands, and they only get a little bit bigger than this even, so they're great for like a balcony or no balcony at all, just a really sunny window. There's some absolutely beautiful purple basil, and I'm gonna pick some more of this beautiful purple kale just to show you what I do in the kitchen. Maybe this big leaf too. This stuff works really well for kale chips as well. Just is a bit more flat, doesn't hold as much spices. Yesterday, we did the gene planter tutorial. This one's already watered and it's actually still wet. But basically, you cut the genes off around the knee. You can use the bottom part of the genes to make a small planter cover. And then the rest, you fold it, twist it, both legs inside each other, and then fill it up with soil. And I put potatoes in here. And so I've left a bit of space so we can add some more soil when they actually pop out of the ground. It's a great way to get more potatoes to grow. So it looks pretty funny. I think I'm going to add some more along this side of my raised beds and see how well they do. I think they're going to hold up really, really well. If you can find cotton genes, they will last for a couple years. These were from the thrift store. They had some repair issues that would make them pretty uncomfortable to wear after repair, so I figured they're a good candidate for further repurposing and aren't really able to be donated again, so they're a good candidate. Let's take this kale inside and I'll show you what I do to prep that and how to make kale chips. So right on the street we've got trucks going by, but garden's actually looking really good. I should show that for a brief second here. My front yard garden looking very nice in the sunshine. All right, let's go into the kitchen and make kale chips at 8 a.m. You know what? They would be pretty good with like crumbled on top of eggs. And it could be a pretty good bacon substitute. If that's something you're interested in. All right. Let's put it never likes when I put it on the tripod. Okay. Here we go. Here's the kale. Let's tilt this down a little bit. You're gonna want a sharp knife and a cutting board. For a leaf like this, we're gonna give it a quick rinse. These are pretty good because I did water them earlier this morning. And you'll see that we have a pretty thick stalk going all the way down, and that doesn't end up crisping up very nice. Well, I'm reminded of this. I like to turn the oven on while I work so it heats up. For really good kale chips, you want to put the oven at 350. And that happens to be the main setting on my oven. I have a gas oven. It heats up pretty quick and is pretty dry, so I like to monitor my kale chips. It can take anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes maximum for them to be done, so you really want to make sure you don't overdo it because they get very bitter, and if you use garlic and you over roast garlic, it does not taste very good. So if you can see this super well, but these guys also have stems but they're actually pretty small, so I like to just cut off that top and that doesn't end up being very useful. I've got chickens and a rabbit, so nothing goes to waste, but then I end up with something about this big. It'll shrink down about half the size, so this is perfect size for a kale chip, eventual kale chip. For this guy, the stalk is pretty big, so I'm gonna cut down the sides away from the stalk and maybe just at the end there. And I'm gonna end up with like 3 kale chips. That one, and this one, like that. It's okay if they kind of bend over each other a little bit, but we don't want to overlap in the pan. Big kale chip piece. Maybe some little ones. Little ones end up becoming these little crumblets, which are fine, but becoming more and more messy to clean up. All right, stalk is removed, ready to go to the chickens. And we've got some kale pieces. This ended up just being like a breakfast show, which was kind of fun. There we go. I like them, kind of bite-sized pieces. They will get smaller, so I'm keeping that in mind. Well, those wait. You want to get a pan with parchment paper ready to go. This is probably a little extra parchment paper than you really need, but it was the end of the roll. So that works. Once I have these pieces, you can put them, this is actually not a lot of kale chips, but place them in a bowl. I used this the other day, so it just got some nutritional yeast in there. I'm going to be very sparing. For a large bowl, you probably only need about a teaspoon. So I'm going to use like a very small amount of olive oil, maybe half a teaspoon even. I'm going to get my hand right in there just to make sure that both sides of the kale are evenly covered. Honestly, I would want to eat this as a salad. It looks super good. Once both sides are like evenly coated with the olive oil, then it is ready for whatever spices, flavoring. You could even add hemp seeds, sesame seeds, some extra crunch, but it is ready for seasoning. I'm going to use nutritional yeast from the Bulk Barn. It has a Parmesan cheese-like flavor, but it's totally vegan. And what I really like about this, although it does look like fish food, is it sticks really, really well. And I find that Parmesan, real Parmesan, actually like falls off of the kale chips. So in the process, so this really sticks and coats, and you can add quite a bit guilt-free. I'm just gonna wash off my hand. Guys, I don't know why it paused. I'm just gonna sprinkle on a fair bit there. Do a little toss. Make sure we're getting it all on the kale chips on both sides. Once those are done, you take the parchment paper, and normally I'd have probably a little bit more kale chips going on, but I'm going to place them as close as possible. A little bit of overlap is okay, but we definitely don't want to put them on top of each other because they will just end up being soggy and not crispy. So super close, making sure that they're not even folded on each other. Small bits are okay in the end because you can always use them as like a salad topper on top of eggs. These actually end up being about the right amount for this size of pan, like so. And I'm gonna take a little extra of the nutritional yeast and sprinkle each kale chip with a little bit more. I don't know if you can see too hard, but the more frilly kale holds a lot more of the flavored stuff. And just for good measure, because I found that when I did this the other night, they weren't quite as salty enough, just a little crack of salt. There, and you can do whatever flavoring you want. I've seen people do like lemon pepper, I've seen Cajun seasoning, popcorn seasoning, etc. We are then, let's see if I can turn this around. Oven is heating up. They're gonna go on that top rack and cook for about 15 minutes in my oven in particular. Let's imagine that they've been in for long enough. You pull them out, you let them dry on the rack, and what you end up with are these really cool, I did a bunch of different flavors. I did everything bagel seasoning the other night, but you end up with these really awesome kale chips, and they are super crispy. I will crisp one up. And what you really want to make sure in terms of preserving them is that you let them fully cool down on the pan. If you remove them and start layering them on top of each other, the moisture will, but the heat will gather moisture in the air and they'll end up soggy again. So you want to make sure before you stack them, ready to snack, that they totally cool down. If you want to eat them warm, eat them right from the pan. And yeah, experiment with flavors. And some of these are like purple kale and the coloring looks a little different. But overall, the everything bagel spice was pretty good, except the spice pieces are kind of big, so they like fall off. But they're pretty good. Curly kale, again, is the best, but flat kale, smooth kales totally work and are delicious. So yeah, thanks for joining me briefly this morning to redo the workshop we did last night. Every Wednesday I go live on the Guelph Tool Library page, and we talk about garden stuff, harvest from the garden, and I'm really excited to share more of that this year. If you have anything you want to learn or do or see me do, just shoot a comment and I'll try to do it. Anyways, have a really great day, and yeah, enjoy the sun.